Okay, today we're going to talk about speed reloads. As you see there, I loaded one shot, kind of simulating going all the way through a magazine. Anyways, I had a click, and so I racked it back. This is a time to do a reload. Now, there's a few ways that you can do this. So, there's some people who will, like me, the first thing you want to talk about is how to grab the shell. So, depending on the way that you're going to actually load it, basically you can load, and the most efficient way is actually have the action open instead of loading it into the magazine and then racking it in. So depending on how you're going to load it, if you're going to go overhand, you want the brass to the index finger. If it's going to be underhand, obviously you want the brass to the pinky. And then you just go here, you find the hole, and then you kick it in. So if you're going to go overhand, it's basically the opposite. It's the overhand version. So like if you have a side saddle here or a butt saddle where the brass is up, you grab it, put it on the index finger, put it in. Now from here, for the overhand, you have a couple of options. I've seen some people that basically like to shuck it forward, and some others who will basically go ahead and put that back in there. So others want some that will go over and just throw it forward and then go, or others that will put it in and then roll under and kick it forward as they're shouldering. Those are effective methods, but so guess I'll get that later. So my method is basically I can keep it either chicken winged, or I can keep it in the shoulder. Shotguns are pretty light compared to other weapons that I manipulate, so grab the other shell, go under, and then I can just slide my hand forward and put it into action. That's my preferred way. Now, as we all know, basically shotguns are constant feed weapons. You need to constantly be feeding them. They're hungry hippos, if you will, of the gun world. So this one has a capacity of 6, and then one in the chamber, so a total of 7. It's very uncommon for you to go through all 7 unless you're having poor accuracy or if your loads are ineffective against the creature you're shooting at. Now, with this being the 870, most of this video is going to apply to pump actions or 870s in general, because we're going to go over some things that are kind of unique to the 870 in general. So, anyways, just might as well grab it while I'm here. So, anyways, my preferred way is basically, all right, click, and then pull it back, throw it in, and you're good. So, then from there, grab the other shell, and as you can see, I'm chicken winging it, throwing it in, and this is a little bit more ergonomic and a little quicker to do, in my opinion, instead of pulling it down and throwing it in, unless you have a side saddle. But I want to talk about what a side saddle is good for, or a buttstock holder would actually be good for in a second. But these are the basic principles that I think you should practice, no matter how you intend to actually use it, because if you get a side saddle, you're probably going to want to get used to this overhand. And my recommendation is not to fling it forward and put it into action right away. You can. It's up to you, but I typically like to not waste time and just get into my shoulder as I'm putting it into action. So, with all that said, I'm going to go ahead and talk about loading up and basically upfeeding or topping off the shotgun. Now, I have a shell in the chamber, but I only have 4 shells here, and with these shells, you can typically grab about 4 of them. Depends on your hand size. I have pretty small hands. Sometimes you can get 2 or 3. If you go around like with just 2, it'll probably be a lot quicker. You won't really fumble, because the likelihood of you fumbling and dropping one is increased with every shell that you get. And you're going to have to kind of juggle them around to get your thumb behind it and the others out of the way. So if you're going to be topping it off, the grip is very important, and how you grab it is going to be very important. So here's the thing, if you're going to be grabbing it from a side saddle, which I wouldn't really recommend necessarily, it's going to be a little bit slower, and you're going to have to switch them around, unless you want to do the whole competitor thing of basically grabbing them and shucking them in with your index finger or whatever. There's some people that can actually do that, or they can shove it in with their thumb. It just depends on how you're going to do it. But with all that said, my recommendation is to hold it like this, brass to the pinky, and as you can see, I basically load it like a diamond right here, and then basically I push them in one at a time, and you'll see that the shells are pushed off to the side and my thumb is free but still hanging on to them, and you're gonna have to move your thumb around to get behind the other one and still maintain support of all the shells. So you can do this from the shoulder, or you can have a good support of chicken wing. I wouldn't recommend staring at your gun. It doesn't require staring. It's very intuitive to get it into this hole, especially for the 870. It's got a guide right here. It's very hard to get to hang up, really, from my experience. I've seen other shotguns that actually have an issue with that, but this is not really one of them that has that issue. So just keep that in mind. So anyways, let me go ahead and get a couple of other shells, and then we'll talk about, constantly feeding it. Okay, so we've got the other shells in hand here, and I'm just going to put these in my pocket, and I'm going to try to have the brass up, so when I go to grab them, they're already to my pinky, so I'm ready to just load them into the magazine as we go. So now, when we're shooting the shotgun, we got to remember, as I said earlier, it's a very hungry weapon. So basically, you shoot 2 shots, you take cover, and as you're evaluating the situation, this is why you want to keep your eye on the gun and not your loading, because it's only during the lull in the gunfight that you can actually afford to do this. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get behind this barrier and kind of demonstrate from a little bit of a distance away, so you can still kind of see what I'm talking about. So. That didn't require me to actually look at the gun. I just chicken winged it, held it under my forearm here instead of under my armpit, so it was a little bit more of a 45-degree angle, a lot easier to work with, a little more ergonomic. But I didn't have to look at my gun in order to actually be able to find it and reload it. And I have not worked with the shotgun in a long time, but that's a big thing, is finding an ergonomic way to deal with it. As you load it up more, it's going to get a little heavier, so you got to find your method to balance it and keep it under control. So anyways, with all that said, next thing I want to talk about is something that's unique to the 870, but it can be done with other weapons, and that is basically a switch over. So I've got 1 shell left, and we're going to simulate. These are all slugs, but we're going to go ahead and simulate me switching over from like buckshot to slugs. Now, a lot of people would be like, why would you do that? Because it's going to require you to eject this shell that is in here. Why would you do that? Well, if you guys like to watch like Police Activity or any of those other channels, there's a lot of shootouts that police get into where they engage people with shotguns, but they may need a little more precision. Maybe they're dealing with someone with body armor, and if they have a side saddle where they're actually able to use slugs like these 1.25 ounce slugs, they would actually have pretty good effect on target. So these things can punch through body armor and other things like light body armor, so it's pretty good for them to be able to take out an assailant. It kind of substitutes a rifle in some ways. But anyways, that's another discussion. So basically with the 870, if you want to go to a slug because you're dealing with more distance and you want a little more precision to kind of end the fight, and you know your pattern isn't going to stay tight enough, one thing you can do is basically pull it back, unlock with this switch, and pull back about halfway. And from here, the magazine is going to be ready to kick a shell into the chamber. So all you do is you take your thumb and you push it, and you'll hear a click. You'll feel it too. And that is basically reloading the magazine and holding that shell. So when you eject it, you're not going to get another one in here. There is no shell in here. So basically from here, you grab your other one, and this is where that technique comes for the overhand. You grab it from the side saddle or wherever you're keeping it. If you're pulling it out of the pocket, just roll it in like this. But for side saddle, basically throw it in, and you're good to go. And now you're switched over to a slug for a precision shot. Now, if you have a couple less shells in the magazine, you could probably throw a couple more shells if you think that's gonna be what you need, and you can just repeat this process as needed. With the 870, that's one thing that I really like about it, is you can perform that. I'm not really sure about other shotguns. I haven't fiddled with them too much. I've pretty much stuck with the 870, except when I was in the military. I had a Mossberg, but I didn't really get to mess with it all that much, except for like breaching rounds. So anyways, with all that said, let's go ahead and get on to one other topic. the last topic I want to talk about is little modifications that you should do, and being kind of a hypocrite, I'm recommending these modifications. I usually don't, but it's more of add-ons and accessories that actually are helpful. So things that might actually help you out, there's some people that'll actually get, you know, quick reload things that'll hold one shell. That could be handy, but the likelihood of that staying on if you're going to be using this for home defense or if you're a law enforcement officer, probably not that good. But the side saddle, you can get elastic ones or plastic ones. Ernest Langdon is pretty much just announced his LTT semi-automatic Beretta shotgun, and it had a side saddle that actually was metal. It looked like it was metal, or maybe hard polymer, but basically on the inside there was this spring-loaded piece that would just constantly hold tension. I think if I was going to get something, that would be the thing to get, but I don't know how compatible that would be with other weapon systems. However, with all that set aside, you could also use a butt pad as well, or a little butt shell holder as well. But I think the thing to remember when you get side saddles on, you can carry 4 to 6 or whatever that can offset the weight and increase the weight. That may take down recoil. I'm not really quite sure. I haven't fiddled with them all that much, except on maybe a friend's weapon, but it didn't seem to help the recoil all that much, but it did make them a little handy. I'd recommend keeping the brass up because they can fall down or, you know, whatever, but there's always a chance of them getting swiped out. But, you know, risk versus reward. You got to make that judgment for yourself. So anyways, with all that said, hope this video wasn't too annoying or too long drawn out, but anyways, that's pretty much all I got on shotgun reloads, specifically the 870. Alright, so that pretty much does it. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot off the rest of these slugs and just have a little fun on the range. Haven't done that in a while.